I guess it's about 6 o'clock. Looks like we have all the board members. Are people ready to start? Okay, go ahead and call the meeting to order. Would all who wish join me in a pledge of allegiance? Meredith's got a flag.
Brian, is your sound working? Brian, can you hear us?
My sound cut out there. Did you all get to the pledge or should we do it now? Looks like you're all still standing up there. All right, let's try it again without technology. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice
justice
for all. Okay, that was bad timing. Okay, so we have a number of agenda adjustments, all small things, but adds up to 3 changes. So I would make a motion, as the board has marked in red, to add an item 8C, OHS English class approval, an item 8D, OEF grant approval, and an item 8E, school calendar adjustment. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion or other adjustments? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have the minutes from January 19th. I would motion to approve the minutes as presented from January 19th. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion or corrections? Okay, we'll vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have warrants. I would make a motion to approve warrants payroll 15, regular warrant 15, and bond warrant 29. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Go ahead and vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have public comment. Looks like we have all regulars here, so I don't need to give a preamble. Anybody want to give a public comment?
Yeah, sure. I think everyone here knows how I feel about school safety at this point. The only thing I wanted to point out is that we've had a lot of really positive news lately about getting students back to school. It's made me really excited. I don't know how many people here have read the CDC publication in the Journal of the American Medical Association, but it basically says that as long as we're sticking to the safety protocols that mostly our school district has in place, things are looking pretty positive for a full return to school. One thing I did was that I looked through all the references and I read the references. And it struck me that there are a lot of limitations on the studies that are being used for the science. And I just wanted the board to kind of keep that in mind as they're making decisions moving forward. The most applicable of those studies was the one that was published in Morbidity and Mortality Weekly, which is a publication put out by the CDC. And that looked at 17 rural Wisconsin school districts. They had outstanding results in terms of not reporting transmission within schools compared to the community at large. But there's some limitations. And one is that they didn't have any testing. unless a student was symptomatic enough that their physician thought they should get tested for COVID. And since we know that kids often have lighter symptoms than adults, the study acknowledged that there was no way to tell if there was asymptomatic transmission going on within the schools or not. The other thing is that, I noticed that compared to our system, they had pretty strict cohorting. So all of their students were in cohorts of 11 to 20 students each, right up through the high school. And those students did not mix with any other students. And one other difference is that if they had any student who had any symptoms at all that might be attributed to COVID, not only that student, but all of the student's siblings stayed home. They also didn't have after school activities indoors at all, period. So they were doing some things in those Wisconsin school districts as a part of the study that we're not doing here. And I would just hope that moving forward into the spring, if we start to see some variants of COVID appearing in Maine, which luckily we haven't seen yet, that we kind of keep in mind some of the strict parameters that they were using in this study in Wisconsin, in an area where they had pretty high levels of community transmission and the schools appeared to be very safe. But just really look at, when we see positive things in the news, digging down into the details of those reports so that we can make decisions based on the science and not based on kind of the popular news reports. And hope everyone has a great night. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Last call. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward. Start with acknowledgements. Aaron?
I just want to acknowledge teachers and staff who went through a big changeover this week with having some students coming back full time. And just from my point of view, I really appreciate it. And it seemed like it went really well. So thanks a lot.
Jake?
I have nothing at this time.
Leo?
I would like to acknowledge the new inductees into the National Honor Society at OHS and acknowledge that program overall and Shauna Goodall's shepherding of the program. And I trust that Bill McDonald will get an official acknowledgement, but if not, then certainly would want to acknowledge Bill McDonald, who I didn't realize was actually at the Orono schools before I was. So 50 years, that puts him there before me, for the record. Scout's honor. Maybe only by 2 or 3 years, but.
Mark?
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add except to second what's been said. Meredith?
Yes, Bill was on my list to acknowledge. Thanks, Leo. And I think maybe most of you have seen some of the acknowledgements we did in district last week. But Bill reached that milestone last week of 50 years of service to Orono schools, which is truly, remarkable and probably something that we may never see again. It's just not common today at all for that kind of milestone to be reached. And so there were lots of comments on our Facebook posts about people from, times past in the Orono schools who remember him fondly for bus driving or, his work around the school. And so, lots of students have passed through the halls during his time here and during his service. So we just want to acknowledge appreciation for his service. And, I think that it meant a lot to him. The middle school staff did a special recognition and we joined with that to make the day special. And I think he was surprised and, felt appreciated last week. So I do want to acknowledge that to everyone. I also wanted to acknowledge Shauna Goodall, just to kind of carry that acknowledgement a little further. Induction, the silver lining is she didn't have to worry about a snow day this year. It seems like we always have a challenge with the induction date every year, but made the most of a challenging situation and trying to make that special. So thank you, Shauna. I saw the signs around town. That was a really nice way to add something extra this year to acknowledge those inductees. So we appreciate the efforts and also of the the senior NHS members for their leadership in the induction as well. I also wanted to acknowledge the staff and the students who made the transition really seamless last week. It was a really smooth transition. There were some adjustments that we made in different parts of, the school and flow and how we conducted some things, but it all went really smoothly. And that's really a testament to our staff and our students for how they managed that transition. And finally, we've listed here, we had an anonymous donation in the amount of $350 to food service to support the program. And we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for that donation.
Great. Anybody have anything they missed?
Oh, one more thing. I
Yep.
want to acknowledge that it's Aaron's birthday. Happy birthday, Aaron, and for coming to spend your birthday with 23 other people on Zoom.
Happy 29th birthday, Aaron.
Yeah, no other way I'd want to spend it, really.
Right.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, just don't make us sing happy birthday to you.
No, I would actually appreciate it if you didn't. That would be fine.
We can all mute and then sing.
All right. Next up, we have reports. Kristen, you want to start us off?
I'd be happy to. Happy birthday, Aaron. So I'm just going to echo what we've already talked about as far as having our 4th and 5th graders back at ASA. I feel like we're all together again, which is fantastic. I walked around that very first day and it was so wonderful to walk into the classrooms and see everyone together. I've heard a few parents say, wow, they were really tired by the end of the week. But yeah, they did a great job. So thank you to all the staff and all the students for making that work just wonderfully. Great to have everyone back. Our student council continues to work really hard to spread kindness and helpfulness throughout our school. We had a hoodie day on Friday, which was really great. Great to see so many different hoodies. And in honor of Valentine's Day, the student council gave out a heart to each student and teacher to write about what they love about ASA. And what we're going to do is we're going to hang those hearts, or Miss Neville is going to hang those hearts all the way through the halls of ASA in the center part of the school. And some of these are so creative. I saw a few on her desk the other day, and people have decorated the hearts, and just the words that they're sharing are just amazing. So we'll make sure to get some pictures of those for people to see. Meredith Diamond joined our staff meeting last Tuesday and talked a little bit about a collaboration between the NWEA and the Khan Academy for a tool that's called the MAP Accelerator. And this is a tool that allows for really precise intervention for math in students in grades 2 through 9. And it's really based on their scores from the NWEA. It's done for 30 minutes per week, and you can break it out however, and the teacher can see in real time how the student's doing on specific standards. So pending conversations with the middle and high school. I don't know if she's had a chance to have a chat with them yet. She's looking at perhaps purchasing that and being able for us to be able to use it maybe for the end of this school year and see how it works. Right now we use an IXL program, which works well, but this would be more streamlined to go along with the NWEAs. And finally, the last thing I want to say is a great big thank you to our, as usual, the ASA PTO, which is awesome, and Mr. Butler for purchasing outside play items. So we've got those little sheds that the PTO built for us. We have those 2 sheds, and now we have sleds, we have shovels, we have spoons and forks, like the large ones. The kids love to pretend that they're making stews and soups. It's so much fun. But we really appreciate all that. They made bricks. There's the brick makers, you pack the snow into the brick maker, and they were making different houses and things. So it's been great. And the kids have I love to watch their imagination. There's just nothing like it. So a big thank you to all the people involved with that.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I just want to thank Meredith Diamond for this, kind of piloting this MAP accelerator thing. This sounds to me like exactly what we need to be doing with the NWEA data. I mean, this board is long on record as being supportive of the NWEAs in particular, and this is just I think a great use of this. So I want to thank Meredith D for doing that.
Next up, Richard.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to kind of add on to what Meredith was saying earlier regarding Billy McDonald. And we had it was a fun celebration last Monday, January 25, where a school-wide Google Meet, and it was the hardest part was keeping it a surprise for it was about 2 weeks in the planning or so, and so we gave him some small gifts, and it was a lot of fun. Meredith came over and gave him a plaque, and he was totally surprised. So that was fun. As I shared in my board report, we have we brought 8th graders back last week and moved 6th grade to hybrid. And like anything else, as much planning that went into it, there's always things you find out once the rubber hits the road that you need to make adjustments, things you didn't think about, and all of that. So, but I would say overall it's gone very well. Hats off to our 8th graders in particular for really stepping up and accepting the the challenging school year with a level of maturity that you rarely see in 8th graders. So I really appreciate that, and I tell them repeatedly we can't do it without them. So they are doing a nice job in that regard. But we did have to make some adjustments to how we do things. We are continue to offer 2 lunches, but we had to shift the rotation around a little bit, and so we have 8th graders on both sides. 8th graders eat alone, and the other 2 grades eat not mixed, but in the gym on either side of the curtain. And then I have half the 8th graders on either side of the curtain. So that was an adjustment. We had to adjust our advisory groups. We moved from 3 to 4 advisory groups. And so that allows us to have approximately 15 students per group in 8th grade during advisory time. And so those numbers are acceptable, and we can socially distance within the classroom with those numbers. And reciprocally, we moved 6th grade from 4 groups to 3. So in order to help make that adjustment for 8th grade. Some of our class sizes in 8th grade are, around 20 or a little over in some cases. And so we have had to make some adjustments. We set up we closed the curtain in the gym, and the side of the gym that is closest to the office, we've turned that into a classroom space for 2 classes, 1 Spanish class and 1 math class, Algebra 1. So we've reconfigured that. Students sit in the bleachers, and we have a TV with an Apple TV hooked up to it, so that can be used as a projector monitor. We have a portable whiteboard and a little rolly desk for the teacher to use as a teaching station. So we rolled that out last week, and that's going very well. In band, and we're back to band, quarter 3 band and chorus for students. And Ms. Acosta is doing a nice job in there. They're starting to play horns. I did visit in there the other day, and they have I don't know what you call them, like covers for the horns, masks for the horns, and masks for the students with a hole in them, and they're in there playing music and spaced out 10 feet apart. And also Chad Kirkpatrick is back with us in the afternoons to help with the larger PE classes in 8th grade. So that's much appreciated. We can't really do it without them. So that's nice. And they're continuing to offer classes outside, which is fabulous. Like anything else, one of the things we didn't think about was it's noticeable with the increased student numbers in the building, and with things like athletics in full steam and outside PE, we've noticed there's just not enough place to put everything. So we're looking at options there to help students, every nook and cranny has things in it. Classrooms, my office is sort of a locker room for a few students, and so we're looking at opening up the lockers again and installing some like coat hooks in certain areas of the building, you know, so we can kind of have a designated place to keep things. And so those are things we're looking at and adjustments that we're having to make. I'm also happy to report that our enrollment has gone up the last couple of weeks. We've had a couple of new 8th graders join us. We had one move and a couple more join in. So that's good news. And I think I reflected that in the enrollment report. NWEA is going quite well, I would say. The last time I reported out, we had a number of students who didn't complete testing. So right now we have 44 out of 46 6th graders complete the test. And two students were unable to participate, family reasons. I can't go into the details of that, but family reasons. So I'd say 6th grade is finished. 7th grade, 38 out of 39 students. We have one student opt out, the family, and then 8th grade, 55 out of 62. We had 6 students opt out and 1 student move. So I'd say we're pretty much wrapped up with NWA testing. Those numbers look very favorable. And I also wanted to note Meredith Diamond, like in helping us look at the data and that the tool that we're discussing as a math, as a way to involve students and accelerate their math progress. That's appreciated. And so that's what I have to report tonight. Oh, athletics. I wanted to report on athletics. We had right across the board, with the exception of 2 sports, our numbers are pretty comparable to last year. And football is down, obviously, because we moved to flag football. We had limited games, et cetera. So we had 32 students last year and down to 7 this year. And cheering was the other sport that took a hit this year. And I'd say it's entirely pandemic related. We're down to 6 students from 21 last year. But all the other sports are pretty comparable in numbers from this year to last year.
Any questions? Go ahead and move on to Reg.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'll start with winter sports. We're up and running. Every team except for Nordic skiing has had a competition. And if you haven't had a chance yet, I encourage you to check out the watch our basketball games online. We install these Pixelot camera systems that televise each of our home games, and most of our competitors also have these systems installed. So through the National Federation of High School Associations, NFHS, they provided these systems through a grant, and you can access these games through a subscription on their website. And there's no, color or play-by-play guys, but they're really cool to watch. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage that. The only sport that is really having a hard time scheduling competitions is Nordic skiing, and they've just had some challenge. It was snow for a while, but also I think we're finding, Mike Archer gives some more details, but we're just having a hard time finding places that are willing to host races. So, but we have a good number of students participating, and I'm sure we'll have a race coming up soon. I'll give one more mention to the National Honor Society. Shauna did a great job. It actually translated well to Zoom because it's been tradition for our seniors to introduce our new members, and they did a great job. I mean, it felt like it was rehearsed. They were right on cue. The inductees, knew enough to say thank you. It triggered their camera, so they would come on the screen. And but that night is the culmination of a long process that starts with selection of new members back in the fall, and that is not an easy process because not everyone gets selected, and that leads to some challenging conversations. So it's a nice celebration. And again, I want to give kudos to Shauna for not just the celebration at the end, but for the leadership throughout the whole process. So thank you, Shauna. I want to mention our December students of the month for 9th grade. It's Rebecca White from Orono, and 10th grade is Mary Holly Whitmore from Bradley. 11th grade is Riley Murray from Glenburn, and 12th grade is Jason DeSisto from, I'm not sure why I put Greenbush on. He's from Orono. I put Greenbush on my report. He's an Orono kid, or he's from Orono. A collaboration with families, we did send out 2 separate surveys back when we were kind of making plans for bringing more students back for in-person. We sent a survey out we invited all of our full remote students to return for hybrid for the 3rd quarter. And then, as you know, juniors are back for full in-person, and seniors have gone hybrid. Sophomores will come back when we return from February vacation. Tomorrow night is our first ever virtual open house for new students. We're expecting a good turnout. We've already started meeting with 8th graders. Our guidance office has been meeting virtually. They started last week, met with Glenburn. Well, I'm not sure exactly the list, but they've started last week. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. So we'll see how that goes. We're ready. So all of this is new. Yeah, so we started our transition to 3rd quarter last week. That was very smooth for a lot of students. It was reuniting with their 1st quarter teachers. And so that I'm really curious to see how that goes. There was concern about this gap of the 2nd quarter where maroon classes wouldn't, be meeting, but I'm just curious to see how this goes by the end of the quarter to see if that gap kind of quickly was taken care of, or did it cause problems throughout the quarter. And let's see what else. We got course signups coming up after February vacation. And then finally, we are doing makeups for the NUIAs this week, getting the in-person 9th graders that either didn't complete them a couple weeks ago or were absent those days. And then the last group will be our remote students who will invite back on a Wednesday, shooting for next Wednesday, actually our first round. And so far so good. Today would have been a testing day, but obviously it was a snow day. So we'll pick it up again Thursday and Friday and catch today's kids next week. So that also has been a challenge because just cohort A and cohort B, and they're not all in English 9 this quarter. And just it's been a logistical challenge, but we're chipping away at it. So I think that's everything.
Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, I did a few. Thanks for those reports. Reg, are kids and parents signed up for the step up, or is it not a sign up? It's see who shows up. How does that work?
It's see who shows up.
It is.
Yeah.
Is that always what it's like, even when it's in person? Same deal.
Yeah.
People. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was curious if what the difference might if we've seen any major differences or not.
Yeah.
If there was a sign up. And I guess an observation, looking at the enrollment numbers. One of the things that I think is concerning for me, looking at those numbers, is that number of fully remote. Well, I guess firstly, I'm encouraged to see that those that have been given the opportunity to come back full in person, the vast majority have. So that I think that's encouraging. I am concerned about 110 total number at the high school that are fully remote. Don't know if I saw that you did a survey asking people to come back. I didn't know if that was, now I just heard what you said, and now I remember the survey. So that was prior. So that wasn't a result of having so many there, I guess is what I'm thinking. So any thoughts, or anybody else concerned about that number? Board, anybody?
I mean, I just believe that I'll just say people have been very complimentary of the job we're doing with full remote classes. So I think that's part of the reason a large number of families are choosing it, because they feel like they're having a good experience. But I agree, Leo, that those numbers are, in my opinion, are high. I'm surprised that we're still at, almost 30%.
And we were in November, it was 62 or so. So I mean, we're not quite double, but that's a pretty big migration, I think. And I know, well,
I guess that doesn't surprise me, given the concerns around just the holiday surge and just concerns about being back in the building.
Yeah, I think when people, a larger number migrated to remote, approaching the holidays, during that time, just after that time, people adjusted to it and decided to stick with it. We've actually, when we did the survey, one of the things that Sam, Reg, and I talked a little bit about is we had a few more kids move into remote even since these numbers. So, it's a family decision, and I guess, am I concerned? I'm not sure if I should be concerned. I guess we do have some students who are in remote that it's not showing to be a good fit for. And with those students, we work with them and try to see if there's something we can do to get them back. But for the majority, it's a good fit. They're doing well with it. They're doing well in their classes. And so, our model is, this is available to you if you want to elect to do this. We're not encouraging people to go that way. We're trying to work with people who really, it looks like another option of in-person would be a better fit, to see if we can resolve any barriers they might feel are there, or any issues they might have that would help them come in person. But am I concerned? I'm not sure how to answer that. I think for some people it's working.
Yeah, and I think being candid, I know that it is a lot easier to wake up at 7:55 and be in bed and be in class than it is to get up. So I think some of that probably comes into play, is my candid, honest opinion. And I don't know, and every kid's going to be different. As far as students not wanting to be back in the building, I don't know. That seems like the ability to be in there full time, everyone seemed to take advantage of that. So I don't know. I'm not sure it's hard to know what's accurate. I would be very interested to know, I guess, what's behind the choices of people. And if it's say, I'm just feel better about being home, safer, then that certainly is a good thing from that perspective. But I'm not really convinced. I think it would be really interesting to know. And I think I think there's no question. I mean, we've all talked about it. There's no question that in-person education is better for everyone. And I understand.
I don't think you can say for everyone. Certainly for most kids. But there are kids who thrive in remote instruction. I don't think it's a large number, but mostly, we put it out as a family choice. I don't know that we can second guess it that much. Like, Meredith said, I think the story of COVID in every scenario is there's such a range of responses and consequences and reactions, right? There probably are some kids that are making bad choices, maybe because they like to sleep in, but maybe because they're watching, younger siblings so their parents can work and put bread on the table, right? There's a range of reasons they may be making that choice. But there's also a range of, responses to at-home instruction. Some kids are struggling, and I heard Meredith and Reg say we're trying to get those kids back to full where they can. So I think that's good. But there's some kids that are pretty happy with remote instruction, and they're doing same GPAs they had last year. So I just again, if you identify a trouble spot, I think it's really good to step in, and I think our schools are excellent at doing that. I think we have really strong staff that And this is where having a small school comes out, is people really do know all the kids and pay attention. But I just don't know how you can second guess families by and large. And you can't just say blanket that it's worse for everybody, because it's actually not worse. It's worse for, I don't know what the number is, 80-90% of the kids, but it's actually not worse for everybody. So
Yeah, I mean, 80-90% is a pretty large percentage, but I hear you.
any other questions? All right, next up, I think that we have the superintendent report.
Well, this is the season where we're spending a lot of time working on budget. We're going to talk about that just down the agenda a bit. So that's certainly a big part of what's happening in our office right now. We're also spending a fair amount of time working on CRF and ESSER and all of reconciling and figuring out how we're going to move forward. So that's also, and that's related to budget in some ways, as maybe you've seen on our overview tonight. So I'm not going to spend time talking about that element right now. The building project is also a big part of daily conversation and meetings. Brent, I would say his job role with the building project is he's extremely involved in that. He really takes point in working with the architect and with the contractor on some of the detailed problem solving that's having to be done. An example of that is the electrical upgrade, when existing conditions and work with Amira, were kind of got further down the road. A lot of changes had to happen with the planning. And so Brent's the one who really has been taking point on that. Brian and I certainly are involved to a certain degree. So I should acknowledge Brent, because his other job duties didn't stop as well. So it's a lot on top of that. But we'll talk about this in the facilities report a little more, but I just want to mention there's a lot happening with the building project right now. One of the things I wanted to just do, take a moment to explain a little further, see if you had any questions. I think I copied the board when I sent out notification to the staff about the change with our, it formerly was called the SRO, now it's called Community Services Officer. And Officer Lesky is going to transition, or he has transitioned as of, I think, Monday, into a new role with the department, Director of Community Policing. And we will have a new Community Services Officer, Officer Courtney James, and Officer James will start, I believe she'll be in the building on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And I think this is going to be, it will certainly give Officer Lesky more widespread work in the community in a very focused way. And I really think it's a great match for his skill set. We've been very fortunate to be the beneficiary of that skill set for so long. And he's still going to be really involved in our school in this new role. And will be, as we said, mentoring and supporting Officer James in her transition into this role. And I'm told from Chief Ewing and from Officer Lesky that Officer James has the right skill set for this position. I've worked with a lot of SROs over the years, and I would say Ed is at the top of that list for the way that he approaches the role and the relationships, and really his whole work in our school is based on relationships, and it's just really effective. And he has a high degree of credibility in our school and community as a result of that. And I know that bringing Courtney in and having the opportunity to be mentored by Ed will be a really positive start for her. So I just wanted to give you some background. I think our department in town is taking a really proactive approach with trying to restructure the way the community interacts with the police department, through this role with Ed, and I think he's the perfect person to lead that work. So I think it's going to be really positive for the Orono community at large. And I know it feels a little, I don't know, uncertain for us because we all really know and respect and have become so accustomed to Ed's presence around our schools. But he's not going away completely. We'll see him regularly, and he'll still be involved with, like our safety committee planning and be on site, periodically. But we look forward to getting to know Officer James and her new role with us as well. So do you have any questions about that or any comments or things that I can find out and bring back to you?
No, I just want to say he'll definitely be missed. I know my kids, whenever they see him around town, are like, it's Officer Lusky. They have to run over and say hi to him.
Yeah,
I
he
would
does a
agree.
great
He's
job
gonna
of
be,
that.
he's definitely gonna be missed. The kids all love Ed, and he's done a great job. And I'm glad that he's still gonna be around at least some. So congratulations to him on his position, and we'll miss him.
Yeah. So that's all I had for this report section. We'll cover those other items as we move down the agenda if we want to move to the COVID update and discussion.
Okay, yep, let's move on.
Leo mentioned the enrollment update. We put, I'm going to have to change to another font or another size paper soon, but I like to print my historical view. I think it's really valuable for just the reason I think Leo mentioned, just to see where we've come and how things have changed over time. I think that's really valuable to see the data in that kind of that frame. So you can see, I think notably the remote students at ASA and OMS have been really stable over time. And the high school did see that surge really, through December and continuing now. And I think, we talked about that. I think the in-person numbers, also though have stabilized during that time. We do have, the majority of students, when they are given the opportunity to have full in-person, wanting to take advantage of that. You can see it's about, a little over 2 to 1 are taking advantage of that opportunity. When the sophomores have their rotation, it'll be about the same. We unfortunately, the survey data, we don't hear from everyone. So we have to, go person to person and find out with the people who didn't respond to the survey. So the sophomore numbers, when that transition takes place, when we return from February vacation, we'll have 47 sophomores in person then and 17 in hybrid. So that's how that will flip. And it's almost, really similar to what the junior numbers are. So the juniors will then shift back at that time where they, previously you can see in January 11th had 11 full in person. So those, approximately 11 will stay full in person. And then we'll have the around 40 students back in hybrid in the junior class. So Sam's still tracking down the freshman numbers, those who didn't complete the survey, to know what that's going to look like. But overall, it provides, these shifts in and out of students having an opportunity to have that full in-person, but stable in-person numbers, at least through the junior and sophomore class. Well, the freshman class will definitely be going up when that class has their turn to have the full in-person. With the, I think Richard and Kristen mentioned the transition back to full in-person went smoothly. Richard mentioned there's some things that had to be kind of accommodated a little differently. I think at ASA, it was, I think there were fewer of those things that had to be adjusted. We're really fortunate with class sizes that we can have spacing that's favorable with this full return. And I think, everyone's figuring out the transitions and trying to be mindful of those times. So I think it's working well there. I would say that I read something today from the Department of Education about, what do? We have a couple of grades where if we have one more student enroll, it's hard to find a place in person for that student and maintain the distance that we are trying to maintain. So that's a challenge. And, you know, some districts are saying, we'll give you a remote seat until something opens up. You know, there aren't too many districts that have multiple elementary schools, but that was another suggestion from the Department of Ed to place them in another school in your district, but that doesn't really work for us. So, you know, right now it's working. And, you know, I think that everyone seems to be managing that change really well. As Richard said, you know, and I think Reg has seen this as well. It's helpful when our older students come in and can show that leadership and model the kind of, you know, adherence to the safety protocols that we need them to show, because they're excited. You know, our 11th and 8th graders have not been together as a class yet this year. And so and our 4th and 5th graders the same. So for them to be able to come back and you know, do that in a safe manner and make it a smooth transition is really wonderful. So I want to thank them again for that. One of the things that I wanted to mention, you know, it's in the news. You know, I know that you're probably reading the same things I'm reading. You know, we've sought information from the department about vaccines and where, you know, educators might be in line for that opportunity. And there's just not information right now. I think everything's on hold in terms of updating timelines and information coming out based on supply. And so when the supply picks up, we hope to find out more about where educators can, you know, might be in line for that. And, you know, obviously that's not something we would require of staff, but certainly, you know, want to encourage staff who are interested in that to, you know, if they're eligible now, to go get the vaccine because of, you know, we have some people who work in other settings or, you know, who work in a healthcare setting and on the weekends. And so we've had some people able to get the vaccine already, just a few, and then others who are trying. So, you know, I hope there'll be information coming soon, but I know that's just a chain of events that has to happen for the state to have enough certainty about supply to roll out new information. What's on their website now, on the vaccine website for timelines, I'm told is not accurate. The last time I looked, what was there was told to me by the commissioner was not accurate. So I haven't looked in the past few days to see if they've updated it, because they don't know at this point. So, you know, I sent out some clarifying information to everyone about masks. We had some questions in our safety committee meeting from staff, and we just did some research, so clarified some items. You know, we're having good compliance. Those are just some areas where when we go back and look at the guidance, we felt like we needed to provide some clarification in those areas. So, you know, our staff overall, you know, the feedback is they're seeing really good compliance from students, and administrators say the same. Do you have questions or other areas in this round that you want to discuss?
I don't have a question, just a comment, and it's something I've said before, so we don't need to discuss it. I just want to put it out there that, you know, kind of looking at the enrollment figures you provided for full versus in person, with this latest bump starting in Q3, we've been able to increase the number of in-person students at ASA and at OMS, but OHS remains flat where it's been really since we had a first increase initially. I'd really like to see us, if at all possible, obviously do it safely, but I'd like to see those numbers go up proportionally. I just think that we're still low there compared to the other two schools.
And Meredith, can you, or maybe Richard, remind me, is there a next step for the middle school?
Is there a next step? Well, I think what I'd like to do is bring 6th grade back full-time in person. Then we'd have all 3 grades back. That would be the next step, but.
Okay.
I
didn't know if there was we're doing this kind of like the high school's doing it 3-week blocks. We're not doing it with the intention of moving out and moving sixth grade back in then. I couldn't remember if that was presented or not.
No, we don't have a defined like timeline, but we're just
Okay.
watching it very closely. Sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned. But I think, you know, we want to move cautiously. Like I mentioned, we brought eighth grade back and moved sixth grade to hybrid, and then there's always those things, those unknowns, right? And so last week we were able to see what it looks like having increased numbers in the building, and this week coming we'll make adjustments. And so I think, but I think the sooner the better, and I think I can speak for the staff. They're on board with you know, moving ahead with
And it
that.
looks like
We want to be ready when the time comes.
that number is about 18. It's a delta of 18 right now, or
Not
so,
that many.
right?
That's right.
Yeah, to get in that building,
Mhm.
to have them all back. So that's good. I'm glad we're looking at that, and that is a next step. So appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say with the high school, I think you know, we've talked about the areas of vulnerability that feel different at the high school, and you know, I've been watching the 7-day average, and it's certainly coming down in our state. It's hard to know, you know, where it's going to go, but I would like to have a little more time to see it continue to trend before making a change at the high school in particular. You know, I feel like the 9-week plan we have right now holds us really static through 3 weeks after February vacation. And the last phase of that, as I said, the 9th grade will just themselves bring a, you know, probably almost close to a double increase in the number, you know, we have in person for that grade compared to the others. So I guess I welcome your feedback on what you think that looks like. If you have some feedback on what that plan might be, I'm interested in your thoughts on that, and we can take that and discuss it further. You know, thinking about equity, trying to think about, you know, the difference at the high school compared to the other buildings. It feels more vulnerable. So, you know, like to hear, you know, board feedback on that.
My thought would be, I mean, I think this is where we talked about at the beginning of the year, and then it got off to a slow start, and then I think it started, but it's never been made clear to us exactly how far this progressed. But I think I like the equity plan that's in place right now, although it does concern me to put people in full time for 3 weeks and then to put them back in hybrid. But you know, I like it in terms of the equity approach for right now, but I do think that there is room to bring in a few more kids in full time. And if we could find some kids across the various grade levels who would benefit the most from that and provide that opportunity to them. Now, obviously, as we discussed earlier, this is a family decision. So if that option is presented and families decide not to do it, that's certainly their prerogative to do so. But I would like to maximize. Those spots. I mean, I know we have people out there who would prefer for their children, and the children would prefer to be in full time. I think we have a little more room. I totally agree that the high school is a different situation, certainly than ASA. I think it's unclear from the data how much different it is from the high school and the middle school. I think that probably depends on the kids at the middle school. Some are a little more like high school kids. Some are probably a little more like elementary school kids. But I think we have room for at least some more at the high school. And my preference would be right now to make those spots available to those kids who would most benefit from that. And that if those kids are presented that to their families and the families opt out, then we could go down a list, because I know there's a greater demand there than we have supply. But I do think there's a few more spots. So that would be my advice on that.
I mean, I agree with what Mark said, that I would certainly support, you know, a specific case / need bringing some of those kids back. I personally wouldn't. There's just, you know, all of this, the schools are safe is conditional on the school's following the guidelines, right? And that the high school, they're following the masks really well, but we're having challenges on the classrooms distancing. We're having challenges in the hallway distancing. We're having challenges in the cohorting or podding. So personally, I wouldn't like jump to, like we did at ASA, but I agree with Mark that I'm fully supportive of, we have kids that are specifically going to benefit from coming back. We should be bringing them back on a case by case basis. It feels like, feels like there might still be some opportunity there that's not going to have a huge impact on the numbers, but could really benefit some kids.
I thought we were already kind of doing that. I mean, isn't that what Reg has been, that you're reaching out to students, asking them, the ones that are struggling, if they want to come back full time? That's kind of what I understood. Did I miss the boat there?
No, I would say we are. We have, as you can see, around 20 freshmen, 17 sophomores. We had around 11 juniors, and there's 6 seniors now who are attending full time. Based on, they were recommended for that by staff. And certainly I think, what I'm hearing is the board is saying, we think there's room to widen the net on that. So if there are other students that are that next tier, that, that it seems like that would be a next step to take at this point. So that's helpful to hear. That's the kind of way that your comment is directed right now.
And I would agree with Mark as well. Just to verify, Q4 seniors are coming back full in person. That's been established, correct? Yeah,
that's the intention, certainly, that they are the priority in Q4 for sure. And, I'm hopeful that we can have more than seniors here Q4. But, the reason I personally felt like Q3 was the time to give some other students this opportunity is to be able to circle back to seniors during that last quarter, for a whole host of reasons. But I'm optimistic that, we can have more students in the building by then. So I'm not sure what it looks like, this far out, but, I hope that it becomes clearer as we move through Q3, just, if the cases in the state can stabilize or have a downward trend, that makes, it even more optimistic that we can have a lot of students, give that opportunity to a lot of students Q4.
Yeah, and I would like to think that there's room for more. I do have a question, I guess, because the DOE guidance is 3 feet. I think we've been sticking with 6 feet primarily, but the DOE, the guidance is 3 feet. So are we still taking the approach that we're not considering that guidance when we talk about space and not having space?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have tried to not go down to 3 feet. I think right now our lowest is about 4.5 feet that we have in any space. And Reg is having a problem with his internet, so I can't ask him what the lowest space right now is at the high school. But, honestly, my comfort is not at 3 feet yet. And when I look around at other districts and things that are happening there, I think we're having less interruption into, with cases and the interruption of shifting to remote as a result of maybe taking a more cautious approach here, because, districts around us are having quite a bit more interruption, and, that's a difference in one difference in their framework right now.
For example, what do you have for example on that, just out of curiosity, because I don't know what everyone's doing locally, but
yeah, I mean, there are districts around us doing 3 feet. They have to do that to get to be able to have their students and their framework in the building. And I don't want to call districts out publicly. I'll talk to you individually about some things that I know are happening, but I'm just seeing that we're having, to me, I'm knocking on wood, really great success right now with not having COVID cases pop up and interrupt, anyone's opportunity to have in person. And that's unusual right now.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not trying to call it a district, but I did hear Bangor was canceled last week, but I also heard that was because of busing, not necessarily because of students. So that's not really a
Yeah, I
comparison,
think,
guess.
not every district makes the news. I'm glad that we don't always make the news. I think, I feel for Bangor sometimes. There's certainly a light shining on them often. But, there's been a lot of interruption in some districts that, probably the general public's not hearing about. And, I think our class sizes give us an inherent advantage. It's we make a priority here in order to have lower class sizes. So it sets us at an advantage to begin with. And so, we're able to achieve, hybrid with six feet distance everywhere. Not every district can do that, even with full hybrid. So when you start thinking about more than that, they really are tight in places. So I guess, when I'm thinking about, it seems like it's time to bring more students in the building. That's the time when I feel like 3 feet is something that I'm personally comfortable with. And, the DOE was clear that, 6 feet is better than 3. And so I think.
And it's better than 6.
Yeah.
Stay at home is, I guess, the ultimate.
Right.
Well, the data, there's a large amount of data that's been assembled on this distance, and 6 feet cuts the risk in half of transmission compared to 3 feet. You can still calculating that exact number or what the risk of transmission is in a high school with, 14 to 18-year-olds, but whatever that number is, it cuts it in half going from 3 feet to 6 feet. The other thing I would say, and I know in the end we're just going to have to agree to disagree, which is fine, but there's this push to bring back more kids, and I totally get that. As an educator, that's what I want to do too. But the flip side is what we saw happen at Bangor, which is you push hard enough that you start to get even just a couple of infections, and even if they're, young healthy kids that are not particularly symptomatic, you just shut down the whole school to remote learning, right? So that's the flip side. And with the high school not being potted at all, right, you just have to push the envelope a little bit and get a couple of infections. And then it happened to us once in December too. You're back into full remote by, and that is by CDC guidelines, just because of the contacts that you create across a high school day. So I think there's, again, we've already addressed this in different schools, but I just want to put out there that, even if you're not worried about the transmission risk, it still has a risk of pushing us into full remote for a couple of weeks. And I just think you have to weigh that into how hard you push too.
Yeah, I definitely don't know all that's going on in Bangor, but the latest I heard was a busing thing. It wasn't about students. So maybe there was other times that you're referring to that I'm just not familiar with. But
it happened
again,
in Orono,
I don't want to
right?
drag. What's that?
Happened in Orono. We had 1 or 2 cases, and they were close contacts to so many teachers, we had to go to remote. Right? We just don't have the potting. The ripple effect of 1 or 2 cases is very large in Orono, just the way we're set up right now.
Yeah, and I get the high school's a different animal for sure.
Any other feedback for Meredith?
So shall we move on to budget?
Yep.
I placed in the board materials the information on the new executive order that came out from the state, and basically it allows the vote by referendum to approve school budgets this year again, which is what we did last year. And so I wanted you to know that this is something that is now an official option that we have. I think my recommendation is that we wait a bit longer to make a decision on how we structure our, budget approval process as to whether or not we feel like there's a way to have an annual meeting, or if we need to take this route again. you know, and I'll be interested to hear, you know, board feedback on that as we move forward. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time discussing it tonight, but I just wanted you to know that it's an option should we decide that we need or feel like it's prudent to take advantage of that. So the other thing I provided, usually at this meeting, we're still finalizing the budget, the first pass at budget at this point. And typically at this meeting, we just give some general overview comments. But this year was a little different for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't think we've ever had our ED 279s at this point since I've been here. So since we have those, and for the benefit of others on the call who maybe don't know that acronym, it's the report that the state issues that shares our state subsidy for this year. It's a preliminary allocation report at this point, but it provides us with, you know, really all that we're going to get in time to plan our budget. Typically the final budget sometimes isn't passed until after our budget vote. So, you know, we work off of this until or unless something else comes out. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was just kind of walk you through exactly what we see in that, and then give you a little bit of written information to augment that. Next meeting, though, we'll give more detailed numbers around some of the expenditure impacts. We don't have numbers next to those items at this point because we're still finalizing those. But on the revenue side of things, as this, and I want to thank Lynn for putting this together, as Lynn shows here, our state subsidy is up almost 150,000 for next year at this point. Yeah.
Just a quick question. I was a little confused on this. Is this giving us last year's, or is this based on the 279 for this year?
This is this year's 279.
Because in there it says increase. Okay, no, this is all based on this year's 279. It says 2020. It says 2021 to 2020. That's just a typo, I think, at the top.
Oh, it is. Sorry, it is a typo. Yes, this is for the FY22 budget year, which is the 2021-2022 budget.
The tuition revenue thing, I didn't understand how we know that's how that would be in there.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a moment. Yeah, so if you'll just hang on, let's talk about the ED 279 for a moment. So the ED 279s, we're up around 14 or 12 students from last year's ED 279. That's a 2-year average. So it takes the current year and last school year and averages them together for our attending pupil average. And that is what the entire subsidy is based upon. We talked a little bit about what the state did to adjust the formula to try to offset potential revenue losses for districts. We were not one of those districts that would have seen a drop, but I think we did benefit from the adjustment. They changed the student to staff ratio for teachers for the grade 1 to 5 to 16 to 1. It was 17 to 1. So that just gave us slightly more kind of subsidy there. But if you compare this ED 279 to last year, we're increased most everywhere except for 2 places. Our pre-K numbers are lower this year. And we limited our enrollment in pre-K this year, but we also didn't have a really big demand. So we have a lower pre-K this year compared to last year. And the other thing that's lower is our economically disadvantaged numbers, which is kind of puzzling, given what you would assume to be the case about need during this challenging time. But I think one of the things that probably impacted that is that with the USDA food waiver that made lunch and breakfast free for all, it really didn't create a need for families to complete the form. And so, we did see a drop there, and I think that it's probably attributable to that. Lynn has some ideas about what we might do in the future. Should we have this happen again next fall to maybe offset that or try to get information to see if we can close the gap? So those are the only two places where we saw slight drops. But even with that, we have the almost 150,000 increase in state subsidy. And the other thing that to me, it's half a dozen, 1/6 the other, but I know it's not to Brian. He has a different take on this, is the increase in local required amount. So we always, ask more in our budget from the community than what the state requires us to. But it did increase by around $40,000, and that's attributable to property valuation. So, that's just, so if you look at the overall increase in this, it's around 190,000, 150 strictly state subsidy, and then the 40,000 increase from the local required. So that's kind of the summary of the ED 279. And Brian, I don't know if you did a pretty thorough analysis as well.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Like you say, there's a little bit of it. They actually dropped the required mill rate, so they did try and shift some of the burden to, state government as opposed to local. But property taxes, property values in Orono went up, and so it's actually the increased property contribution. Orono local contribution is directly attributable to increased property values. For me, the big bottom line is, they didn't really keep inflation with student enrollment and inflation are combined. If you just were to take inflation and increase student enrollments, we're up by about 3.5%, but their total contribution is only up by about 2%. So, we look at these numbers and it sounds like it's going up, and that's always great. But my baseline is, the state funding should be keeping constant with the value of a dollar and the number of students we have. So they've effectively after inflation given us less per pupil, and not to mention that we have more pupils than they did last year. So that's just, I'm not sure I've ever had a year where that wasn't true. It seems to be perpetually true that they're not keeping pace with inflation and growing student enrollment. But we had about 1.5 for increase in student enrollment and 2% inflation rate. And they're giving us about a 2% increase in the total state/local subsidy. So they're keeping track with one, but not both of those factors. So, it's funding that falls behind again from my perspective, which is, I don't know, it's like every year it just kind of comes down on the school boards to make hard decisions about cutting or raising taxes to cover what the state's not doing. So that hasn't changed. That's probably the only thing I would add.
So moving on to tuition, to kind of answer Leo's question, one of the things that we can see right now is, and we've known this all year since school started, is we have a higher number of tuition students attending this year than we projected. So in our projection last year that we, used for budgeting, it was actually accurate at the time of, establishing our budget. But in terms of actually who walked through the door, we had quite an increase in tuition students compared to what we budgeted for. So just based on that alone, and not even considering the, what's going to happen in the freshman class next year, we know we're going to have an adjustment up because we have a lot more tuition students than we have in our budget this year for revenue. So Lynn was hesitant, though, to put a number there yet. We're going to see what happens at Step Up Day and try to dial in on a kind of an estimated revenue for tuition when we have our next discussion at the end of the month. But, I think that's going to help us. Certainly it will, add more to help offset any increases that we have when we add it to the 150 and then increase of the local required. In addition to that, Lisa Smith, as she came on board, she and Lynn really examined how we were doing tuition and, adjusted some of the way that we're billing for tuition to be more reflective of actual costs that we should be passing along to sending districts for special ed costs. So we will see an increase in that projection as well as we put those numbers together for you for a more complete revenue picture. So, there's some good news in the tuition side, even though Brian said it's hard when the state's not keeping up with the rate of inflation. And then with, when we have the QSAB and some of our other loans that return us interest over time, the interest gets smaller. And so that's going down a little bit. And then, of course, we put the additional contingency in our revenue this year to try to be prepared in case there was a curtailment. And that number was 600,000 that we added in. So far, we don't think we're going to need to use that. We're hearing that they're not going to do a curtailment at this point. And, hopefully that remains to be the message we hear. So, presumably that amount would come out. We certainly will need to talk about what we're going to use for a balance forward in our revenue side. But the 600,000 for the curtailment, we will not have used. I don't think we will have used any of that. We can consider that back into our unassigned balance. So any questions on the revenue side?
Just one more on that tuition. So that's what was throwing me off, because that looks like we're talking about this year's tuition, but you're saying this bump from this year, we're confident is going to carry into next year. Is that what you're saying there? Is that what we're saying there?
Yeah, Lynn usually checks with the high school to say, are you hearing that we're going to lose any of these kids? Do you know of any changes coming here? And we project based on that. That's how we do it every year. We project based on what we know at budget time. And what I've seen every year I've been here is we always project just a little more conservatively than what we get, but I think that keeps us, from having a problem. So that's why we're waiting a little bit to push out a number there. But, it's high enough over what we budgeted that it feels like, we're going to see a bump in revenue based on that.
Like all of it, like a normal class, if it's a normal eighth grade class coming through, we still get a bump. Is that kind of the thing?
No, it's just based on this year's freshmen, right?
Yeah, this is based on what we have in the high school now that we did not include in our revenue this year. So just moving forward, if we include them next year, it's an increase. This is not yet considering the tuition seniors we're graduating and the freshmen coming in, and is there a plus or minus with that number yet? We don't know that. We're just saying based on the kids in 9th, 10th, 11th that we have right now, we have more tuition students than we budgeted for. And so we will be increasing based on those students continuing with us unless we learn otherwise from the high school.
But that's just revenue this year.
It's revenue we didn't book that we should have booked if we had a perfect knowledge.
And so we will plan on having that revenue then next year. When we calculate our tuition projection, our revenue, we're always looking at, okay, who do we have in the high school now? And so those are students that get counted in the tuition projection. And then what does it look like we're going to have for a delta with the kids graduating and a addition with the freshman class coming in. So that's how we do that.
We don't have any kind of numbers on eighth graders coming here at this stage, correct?
We don't.
Yeah.
But we only have to recruit 12 to replace our senior class. So
yeah,
that's got to look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're confident that we'll get there. So
yeah,
I think we'll know more after the the step up days happen, and usually the high school gets some feedback to kind of get a sense for what they might expect from.
And then in September. Right?
Right. I mean,
That's when we really
so-
know more.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's what happened this year, right? We
in a
we
good
were
way.
right at the projected number that we set. And then we even adjusted it up some late because we
Yeah.
learned that we were going to get more than we had conservatively budgeted to begin with. And so we were right at that point when we were budgeting, but then in the number that actually came was, you know, those late summer changes. And some of that I think was also some upperclassmen who transferred in. So it's not just in the freshman class. We saw some come in the other grades as well.
Yeah, and I think we do that well, and I think it has to be conservative, because if it goes the other way, then that's a real bad thing. So,
Right.
but that's what was confusing me about this whole thing. But
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions on revenue? So just dropping down to expenditures. So we haven't put any numbers next to this yet because it's still a little bit of an evolving picture. But we wanted to highlight some of the things that we're seeing that are going to be impacts. And, you know, this is our first pass at budgeting. So what we've shown here is what we consider to be kind of the larger impacts in the expenditure side of the budgeting. So as always, we're going to have changes in, you know, salary and insurance benefits to account for kind of, you know, the steps and the increases that we have with staff. You know, we don't anticipate there will be a lot of changes, but there always are. But, you know, those aren't, when we know of something, we do make a change. There's not a lot of change that we know of right now. So we haven't had much adjustment, like with retirements and things such as that, or people that let us know that they're leaving. And so we make a change, but we don't have a lot of that this year. There are some position adjustments or salary kind of adjustments. You can see there that the high school's requesting the addition back of the part-time English teacher. And we'll hear more about that. I don't know if Reg was able to get back on in the event you have questions, but you know, that's one thing that a couple of years ago when we eliminated that position, we said, you know, that we can take a look at that as enrollment goes back up. And if there's a need, we can consider that. And they've brought us that request. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward in the budgeting process. The nurse assistant that we have this year, there's a request to keep that in the budget. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. That's the ed tech who is fulfilling the kind of other nursing assistant role in the district this year. JMG salary support, we've been fortunate to have been under the startup grant with the Department of Labor and JMG. And that is wrapping up this year. It was actually extended one extra year. So to continue that program, we have to contribute to that program cost. And so I can tell you that program cost is $25,000. That's how much they've said they really need for the district to contribute to continue the program. And we are hoping to be able to continue that. There are a couple of stipend additions in the budget, one that we just approved recently, and then one that we had in the contract, and for some reason it didn't make it into budget last year. It was one of those that we missed. So we're adding that social media manager position in the budget. It's already in the CBA. Interestingly, the cross-country position that we approved last meeting, the assistant at the middle school, has been in the budget because it's been happening for so long. Sue just built it in. So that's not something we have to add. And then the technology committee, this year we've been running the technology committee similar to the curriculum committee with regular meetings and paying a stipend for that time. And that work is really important for us to continue. And so we're asking to be able to build that into the budget as well. This year we've been paying for it from some of our relief money because it's been a big part of kind of supporting the district with all the tech use that we're doing this year. But so we hope to move that into the budget. We've removed a position. We've done some restructuring. We lost an employee in that position, was not able to really continue, and staff really worked on restructuring the way we offers speech services across the district. And so we're removing that SLP from the position. It hasn't been filled this year. And so we're removing that. There's some other factors outside of staffing and benefits. We talked at curriculum committee about, a new middle school math adoption we need to have next year because the series is discontinued. So that's a more substantial increase than that line usually sees in a year. The MILTI program, we removed that from the budget for this year because we had some in there to do the device buyback because we were finished with the MILTI lease as of the 1920 year. So for this year, we did the buyout and bought the devices, and they're coming out with the new MILTI RFP soon, I'm told. But, our student devices, particularly at middle and high school, are getting quite tired, and they've had a lot of use and wear and tear. And so we're feeling like we're going to need to do device replacement under this new MILTI program. And so we've built in some placeholders for that. And when the RFP comes out, we'll know more about what that looks like and then can give more details around recommendations for that. Len listed the contingency decrease here and in special ed. In special ed, just increase out of district placements that we're projecting for next year is causing some increases there. There's still a little bit more uncertainty in that section with some changes that, we're exploring and adjustments that we're having to make. So that's one area where we will probably have more items on the list when we bring this to you next time. And then under student and staff support, some of the licenses and apps that we've used this year, we want to carry into next year. Not all of them, but, quite a few that we're going to see some increase there in that line. And then adding in the 11th grade school day SAT administration cost here. Under facilities, not a lot of change. We anticipate needing some continued storage until our building project is over. So we're just putting that in there. We've paid for it this year under COVID relief money. And then next year, or also under system administration, adding some money in to pay for our equity audit that we hope to engage in next year. So those are the big things that jump out to us so far. The next meeting, typically what we bring is more of a, cost center by cost center with some numbers beside the impact. So you can kind of see the impact of some of the up and down that we have listed here. And then there'll be more detail on that sheet. Do you have any questions about expenditures before I talk about ESSER? There will be more discussion on all of this, but any.
I know more obviously details are coming, but I thought we were going to maybe see like all of the new positions this year. I think it would be helpful to see all of the new positions that we added this year and understand the funding for those. Because some came via CARES, I think. For example, the three, we hired 3 permanent, right? We hired 3 full-time ed techs for correct, I was ed techs for subs, or were they just called subs? I forget.
Subs. Yeah, subs.
3 full-time subs. And was that with CARES money?
5 full-time subs.
5 full-time.
2 at the high school, 2 at ASA, 1 at middle school. We used CARES, or we used CRF money through the fall. And in the spring, we're using our budget, our substitute budget line to pay for those. So I can bring that info to show you. Those aren't in next year's budget, so.
They're not. Well, I was curious if there's, if that approach makes sense and is actually a better approach than having call out subs, if we looked at that or considered it or not. That's one thing. And I didn't realize it wasn't going to be in there either.
Well, we carry we carry a sub budget,
Right.
and we have that every year. And we haven't discussed continuing the full-time sub approach. It's something that I think can be helpful. And if we're able to have a ready to go sub in every building, it can be helpful. There are times when we don't need a ready to go sub in every building. And so it's just a matter of weighing, cost versus benefit of that.
Yeah.
And in a time when we can have more flexible cross-building use, it might be something that, probably across the district, 3 subs a day could be put into use across the district somewhere, if not in one building across the district. So that's not built in that model, but our sub budget certainly is built in the way we always do it. And we chose to move those for now into the spring budget because we haven't used our sub line yet this year very much. We've used it some, we haven't used it much, except for, I think, a long-term absence we had in a couple of situations we used the sub line. And it didn't fit into CARES when we shifted over to CARES. And, Lynn and I are trying to kind of follow the framework from the state of, if we have some district funds to fund something, you should use those. And so we decided to move our sub costs into our sub lines for the spring so that, we can really think strategically about ESSER into the next couple of school years. So there are some other positions though, in addition to that. The remote teacher for K2 is not in the budget for next year at this point. The contracted service for custodial is, we left a few days in each building to help with as needed, fill-ins, because it's hard to find subs. So if we can't find subs, left some contracted service in there for, just a small number of days. Those are really and the others are listed here. The nurse assistant, the core ed tech, and the tech assistant are listed on this page. I think that's everything.
You said
Meredith,
core ed tech. Where is that?
it's down under ESSER. I haven't gotten to it yet, but
Oh.
it's down under ESSER. Meredith D, am I forgetting something that we have in those budgets that I'm forgetting? Okay.
And then the first grade teacher that was added, that had nothing to do with CARES money.
Right. No, that was a budgeted item, and we have that plan to move into second grade next year, to move with that cohort.
Does it, any thought to, no, never mind. I'm just wondering if there's any thought to a CARES budget alternative or something. Do we, like, if we had CARES money, the budget would look like this. If we don't, it looks like this sort of scenario? Or is there?
So, so do you mean the ESSER funds?
I'm not sure what ESSER stands for.
So ESSER, CARES is really ESSER, and I forget what it stands for, but CARES is ESSER 1. So it was the first round of relief funding, and it's ESSER 1 is CARES, and it's $94,000. It's what we've transitioned this spring to pay for the remote teacher, to pay for the nurse position, and we're paying for part of the, no, we're not. We're paying for those 2 positions. We'll have a little bit more left in that to carry into next year. And then the ESSER 2 is the new relief package that came out, I forget when.
Okay.
It's just coming, right? It's the it's 389,136. And so we've begun some planning for that. I've listed down below 2 things that we're proposing to put into that budget: the tech assistant position and the core ed tech position. We also, are right now developing plans for what we think will be support needs that students will have for summer programming and into next year, and plan to use these funds to help pay for some of that. So because those should be, you know, time bound kind of projects to help support students as we move forward summer and next year. You know, as I said last time, I think we had to be careful how we use ESSER to not create a funding cliff to, you know, have, you know, all these positions that have
Yeah.
become essential in the district that suddenly you don't have ESSER funds any longer. So I
Now
guess,
knowing what ESSER 2 is, that
yeah,
answered my
sorry.
question.
Yeah. So that's how far we've gotten with, you know, these are two things that we have prioritized here. And, you know, we're still talking about what to do this summer and how we might use these funds for that and into next year. So, you know, we hope to be able to use ESSER. I think we'll have enough for both of those projects with the rest of this ESSER funds. The ESSER funds go through fall of 23. So really we have this for 2 school years. If you can spread your money that then, you know, to last that long, I'm not sure that we'll be able to, but so those funds last the longest. The CARES money that at the end of this year, we're still organizing expenditures across the remainder of CRF and CARES to decide the best way to organize those things. But it's looking like we'll have a small amount of CARES money to move into some of these projects that we do in the summer and beyond. Not a lot and so CARES / ESSER 1. So really ESSER 2 is going to be our main source of funding moving forward. With CRF 2, you know, we got the $66,000 back that we turned back in November. So we're picking up things like the tech assistant salary for the spring, the core ed tech position for the spring, some of the contracted service custodial for the spring. So those are, you know, expenditures that we were going to have to put into our budget, but we're able to put in the CRF money that we're able to use throughout the rest of the spring. So so I kind of transitioned into the ESSER, but do you have any questions about that big picture expenditure or the relief funds at this point? It would be helpful to know, like if there are other pieces of information that you'd like us to bring back, like Leo mentioned, you know, let's see a list of what we have now and where that lives moving forward, or if it's in the budget moving forward. So I'll bring that back.
I mean, the other thing that would be helpful was just our reserves. I mean, we just saw they were in the audit, but I think I remember the general reserve number, but I don't remember the building fund reserve number at the moment. That's changing a lot these days.
Yep, I can do that.
And by the same token, I think we will want to talk, because it, you know, somewhat it's separate, but it's somewhat interacts with the operating budget, talk through the ESSER budget for the next 2 years too. And I know we're not ready to do that yet, but you know, by the time we're voting in April or May, I think I'd like to know where we're thinking all that money's going to go.
Yep, definitely. The other thing that I think it's now in policy actually, and usually we talk about it in this context as we start budget season, is class size projections for next year. So we'll pull that together. I think it, you know, for K through 12. I don't know that we'll have it at the next meeting, but we'll strive to have it, you know, by the early March meeting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the English position, I mean, in general, this board has tried to commit that we want to save money by tracking student ups and downs. And, you know, we've kind of reaped some cases we've moved teachers around in response to that. In a couple cases, we've, you know, not filled positions, not let go anybody, but not filled positions to take advantage of that. But, you know, so I do think it's important we put our money where our mouth is and track the ups too. But anywhere there's an up, there's a down, right? Right now, the high school is going to get bigger as this 8th grade class moves up, and the middle school is going to get smaller. So I just think, you know, it's really important we have that entire across the district view of class sizes. going forward. So I think it's important that the board keeps to the commitments we've made to that, but we have to do that across the whole district, not just add in the places where things are going up. So having that big picture is important. And, by the same token, it would be helpful to see class sizes in the different subjects in the high school from me. And I know we don't have that because the kids haven't even filled out requests for next year, but maybe just based on this year's class sizes for now.
Sure, we can do that. Any other information that would be helpful to bring? Okay. More to come, certainly. You ready to move to the next item,
Yeah.
calendar first discussion? So we usually do a couple of reads of calendar before we finalize it. And so the calendar is definitely first draft that you have before you tonight. We developed this calendar really with a couple of changes in mind. We had a good discussion at our recent JPDC meeting. I think Brian was there. Who else was there?
Jake was there.
Who was there? Like on the board? Jake, yeah.
Jake.
Just, listening to that group and things that they hope to have us consider for the calendar. In addition, talking with our region, our UTC region about calendar, and we received their draft. So some of the things that are a little different about this calendar than typical is one, we're starting just a little bit later than normal. We usually start on the earlier side of things in our region. Usually we start around, on this calendar, it would have been around the 25th of August. And you can see we have a August 30th start date. The August 30th start date is when UTC starts, and I think a number of people in the region. One of the things from JPDC was hoping that we have a longer, not shorter summer. This past summer did feel shorter. We brought staff back earlier, and with the way this year has gone, I think everyone would benefit from, a maximized summer. It's not much, it's three days, but just moving it to that next week certainly has it feel a little different for everyone. And we have, so that's one change. We have 2 in-service days, teacher work days to start the year. That's reverting back to what we've been doing traditionally. We changed it this year and had, actually, for the past 2 years, we've had 3 days there. 2 years ago, we did it because of Power School, and we knew we were going to have a lot of ramp up training we needed to do there. So we moved a day there. This year, we did it to ramp up to everything this year. But really next year, we feel like it's a better move to space that day out. So we have that day placed in January now, because it really evens out kind of the time that we have to work on, all the projects and work that there is to do over the course of the year. So the teachers come back with two work days, and then we added that last teacher workday in January. As you recall, you may recall, we added a teacher workday to the calendar because in our last negotiations, we all agreed to eliminate the 7 one-hour professional development structure that equaled 1 day for teachers in their contract year, and instead place it in the calendar for a work day. And so that's what that January 22nd day is. That's the extra day we have. In addition, the other change is we have 2 additional mini days in the or early release days in the calendar. I think thinking about all that there is ahead of us in terms of a lot of our traditional work and trajectory on curriculum and working on, preparation for an equity audit in preparation for a NEASC accreditation visit at the high school, we really put that work on hold this year because plates have been full, right? We've been really full with the task in front of us right now. And so just knowing that next year we're going to really need to double down and return to that work in a really dedicated and focused way. We feel like adding 2 additional early release days will help, again, provide kind of that ongoing time. We've tried to spread things out. We added a day in September. I think the other extra day is in December, is where that extra day is, early release day. We already had an early release in January each year, and we this year had one in March. We decided to shift that one to April. We've always had one kind of around the May timeframe. So we added 2 early releases to the calendar. I think other than that, everything's pretty much the same. We left 5 storm days in the calendar. You know, that's just a projection, and it's a bonus if we get out earlier, if we don't use them all. But this does build in those 5 days. So that's the kind of frame that we're putting forward for our first look at this. And so welcome feedback and questions about this. And also, if you find any errors, please let me know.
How many days are we off from UTC, just out of curiosity, total?
I haven't added that up. I know we're off. I think it's actually maybe just one. That January day.
I'll just state for the record, I like when we start after Labor Day, but that's never happened ever, it seems. Maybe never. Seems like it did at some point. It just doesn't seem to work anymore. So talk about extended summer. I think that's really nice, but you know, you pay for it on the other end, obviously. Do we have the whole week? Do students have the whole week? What is the purple? ASA early for Thanksgiving, the 22nd. ASA has an early release.
It's the same as this year. We have one school day, the Thanksgiving week, but ASA has an early release because they do their parent conferences, the second wave of parent conferences that afternoon and evening.
And then around Christmas, we have 7 days off, correct?
Yes. And I'll say that with Labor Day, you know, there are some districts around us that do that, but I think this year with the late, when Labor Day is so late that they often don't wait until then on a late Labor Day. So
yeah, I
think Bangor is one of those districts that often does the after Labor Day, but there's something in their contract about, except when Labor Day is after, you know, such and such time, that it's not that. So I think UTC is aligned with that, and their start date is the 30th.
And that's important, obviously.
Can I ask about the full teachers only day in January? It seems like since that would, if it was on the 14th, it would be a 4-day weekend. Would that be some reason that we would move it there, or does it need to be on that Wednesday?
We did it on a Wednesday this year, and we felt like it worked well for just timing and you know, everyone's kind of I guess the work pace. We've had a lot of the early releases on Wednesdays, and so putting that day there seemed to fit the way we did it this year. I'd say the other reason is we feel like, you know, a midweek day like that is helpful for you know, we have sometimes more higher staff absences if we have those days on Fridays. And so we feel like on Wednesdays, we capture more staff, you know, to take part in the work. So it's a trade-off usually. You know, we do have some of those like the October day, but this one, we did it on Wednesday this year and it worked well. And we felt like since it worked well, we would request to leave it there.
Yeah, I just think that makes it, I mean, I think it's a little awkward for parents, just from a parent point of view, where you have to like compensate for a Wednesday and then you have this 3-day weekend coming up. And since we have March on a Friday and October on a Friday, But I'm fine either way. I just think that's a comment I have, that one seems like it would be a little tricky.
Any other questions or feedback?
This is based on 5 snow days right now.
It is.
I think that's good. I would just comment to the board, check out the board meeting dates because we're going to be locking those in. Like Mark, do you have issues with the November 2nd on election day? It's not a big election, I know.
No, that should not be an issue this year.
Well, if there aren't any other comments, we'll bring this back next meeting. We might wait and bring it 1st of March just to give, more time for feedback and staff to take a look and give feedback as well. Okay,
Sounds
anything
good.
else?
We ready to move on?
Yes,
I don't think we have co-curriculars.
we
or
do not.
Extracurriculars. So we have 8B. There is a donation from the Full Plates grant towards food service for 5,000.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just going to say it's above the threshold, so the board has to authorize acceptance. But were you going to expand on the grant?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's been applied for this. We've received this grant a couple of times already, and we were eligible to reapply. And this is going to help pay for the continued cost of the food service delivery driver, which is great to be able to continue that with grant funds. So that's going to be the focus of use.
I guess I would just say kudos to Ben, and I would motion to approve, motion to accept the grant.
A second.
Any discussion? Go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
also vote aye. And next up, we have the English class, which we mentioned last time, but it's been in the board folder. The curriculum committee was fully supportive of it. So I would make a motion to approve the new English class, Mystery, Madness, and Murder. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Go ahead and vote.
I guess I have one quick discussion. Have we decided that we do need to do approvals for all of these? Is that, I know that was kind of a question.
I think there's more discussion to be had, but we figured since we mentioned at a board meeting, we should go ahead and do it for this one. We've been a little inconsistent on this front, so we'll sort that out and become consistent. But just because it was mentioned, we'll go ahead and do this one, was the thought. Any other questions? We'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have another grant approval. Orono Education Foundation has 3 separate funds, and you guys hear from them every February. They approve a number of grants. Teachers, staff apply for the grants, and there's a panel with myself and Meredith and Tom Perry and Lynn Curtis, who's the daughter of Ted Curtis, who originally set up these funds and foundations. And there's the McKinsey Fund, and I'm blanking, Meredith, what's the other name fund? The
Dorothy
Fund.
Wilson.
Yeah.
We
and then-
didn't fund anything from Dorothy Wilson this year. Nothing fit in that was requested.
Yeah, the Dorothy Wilson is for music, I think, and art, and the McKinsey is for social studies, civics, geography, libraries. Yeah, and then there's another fund that's general purpose. So, yeah, we met and we're recommending. I don't think I have the number in front of me, Meredith. Is that?
Yes, it's a total of $2,968.24.
Okay, so I would make a motion to accept the grant of 2,900 and, sorry,
68 and 24 cents.
$68.24.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
also vote aye. And now we have the school calendar adjustment, which was just a change that is happening tomorrow. It's already been announced. But since it's a change to the schedule, it needs to go through the board. So I would motion to approve the calendar change to make tomorrow at the high school a full school day. It was originally reserved for step up, which now has to happen by Zoom. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Do parents already know about this?
I think so. I've seen it discussed correctly on Facebook at least. So
Okay,
that-
I just,
if
you
that's
know,
the
I'm like,
measure.
this is, you know, I knew this was late to spring it on them. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think a notice went out last week.
I was curious about that same question because I don't think I saw any notice, but it could be me not on the right list too. So did an email notice go out to parents and students, everyone?
Reg, can you clarify? I know there was an announcement to students and staff. I'll have to ask Reg if it was in his parent.
Yeah, I don't know if it made it into the weekend preview or not. I'd have to go back and check. I'm not
I
sure.
don't think anything went out.
I guess just as long as people aren't held super responsible if they're all of a sudden not there in the afternoon, then I'm good.
I know the kids know, but which at high school is probably the more relevant of the two if you had to pick. But yeah, it would be nice to let the parents know too.
Yeah, with it being a full remote day for the high school, it's not a big difference in time. It's a small difference in time
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Aaron,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
also vote aye. Subcommittee reports. Policy Subcommittee is meeting on Thursday. We have a quick update to the food procurement policy and then use of cars and DJ purchasing policies moving forward through our policy review process again, starting in the late Ds. I think that's all there is to report for the policy committee. UTC? Nothing.
Nothing.
Jake?
Yep,
Us.
we met last week, Thursday via Zoom. We approved all three budgets. Two of the budgets were going down. One had a slight increase, and that was the bulk of our work. We're going to be meeting again at some point in the spring.
Great. And curriculum committee, I don't think has met since our last board report. We'll be meeting on a week from Thursday. Facilities and building committees meeting tomorrow at 5. We're starting to look at exterior elevations, which is fun. Meredith and I and Brent got to do that with the architect today, and the building committee will do that tomorrow, and then we can bring them to the board. Anything else you would update, Meredith?
There was something I was thinking about. Oh, the other thing that we are taking to the building committee, just to let them know, we made a decision on, we're going to do the furniture procurement and selection process ourselves rather than hire CHA. We're going to inform the building committee of that tomorrow. We've done some, considering of what is needed and whether or not we need that kind of professional support for that. And we feel like we don't with the scope of what we have and the existing furniture we're going to use in some places. And where we are buying new furniture, we just feel like it's something we can manage ourselves. And, use that money instead to actually buy furniture instead of paying the architects to help us with that. So that's the other piece that was a decision made this week, and we'll share that with building committee tomorrow.
And you already mentioned the new transformers, right? One of the big upgrades we're doing is electrical. And that was with Versant changing all the rules. It was pretty complicated, but I think they've almost got that figured out, still renegotiating with the subcontractors. But Brent did a good job of a lot of legwork on that to get that figured out in a way that's not going to impact anything negatively. And go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing that's more just a fun update is they're starting to put the cross beams on the auditorium. So they're really working hard to get a roof and then at least a shell wall up so that they can actually start to do interior work this winter. So that's kind of an exciting thing. The cafeterias in the front of ASA have been a little closer for a while, but the auditorium was clearly about to cross the threshold to close off as well. So
the other thing I was going to say is that I think we are pleased with the work that we're seeing from Bowman and their team. We feel like we're, really going to have a quality project in the end, and, feel like they're really working on our behalf in some ways with making some suggestions along the way that I think are in our best interest. So I've been pleased with them. It's never perfectly smooth, and there are always pieces that we have to work through together. But I think overall, it's so far gone really well.
yeah, I would agree. Let's see, probably nothing on wellness. Okay. Any requests for other business? Any requests for future agenda items?
I wanted to see if we could have maybe some more information on the Rethinking Remote Education Ventures effort and maybe some board discussion around that. As far as, I'm always a little bit leery of the state just sort of throwing stuff out, like, because it seems like this is just a wide open thing, which isn't bad on its face, but it seems like we've also spent a lot of time throughout the years doing things that the state sort of put on us to turn around and have it be something that, okay, we're not doing that anymore. So I guess just curious if the board is open to having a discussion about what we think about remote education and if we have any ideas on direction. And
yeah, I'd say we can certainly talk about it, but I think it's still very early in its development, and it's still a pretty big question mark as to whether or not we're even eligible for this. So I feel like it's a little premature to spend a lot of time and energy on it. I think when Meredith gets a little further with the information gathering, she can certainly bring that back to us. We're by no means committing to anything. So, I guess, we had a discussion and you asked a few questions at the last meeting, and I don't want you to think we're marching down a road that's pinning us into something that that we haven't talked to the board about. So I think it's a little early to spend a lot of time and energy, because as we learn more about it, I'm less and less convinced that it's even going to be an option for us. So because of our free reduced lunch rate, I don't think we'll get priority.
But Meredith is enrolled in a master's program for this, correct?
A course, yeah. We had to have someone in a course to even be at the table to be considered. So she jumped into that, and as she's been involved, we've learned more and are feeling, like it doesn't look great for us, but there may be potential. And if it aligns well with things that we want to do, then, I think that might be something we would bring to you to see if you can authorize us to do that. So
okay.
I would say it's early to be worried or excited, either way. And, we'll certainly share more as we have more, but I
It's
don't think
once-
it's looking
once
really
bitten-
promising.
Once bitten, twice shy is sort of, I think where I'm
Right.
coming from.
Let's give you all this money to do this great thing, right? And then
Yeah. Oh, wait, never mind. Let's not do that anymore. Thanks for putting all that effort in, though.
I'd like to add that, so as Meredith said, I am in this course. The second of 8 meetings happened last night. It's a semester-long course that is being condensed into 8 weeks. My assignment for this week is to begin assembling the pilot. And that is something that, as Meredith said, our eligibility for funding really is a big question mark at this point. And so I have pivoted my approach to using it as an opportunity to synthesize some of the discussions and needs that we are having and identifying in the district into, just really precise planning that potentially can be leveraged in other directions. There's a legislation before the state right now. Testimony is coming next week for increased funding for summer projects. That could be a revenue stream that, we may be able to access. There are a couple of other grant opportunities available. As Meredith said, the ESSER, one of our discussions about ESSER 2 at this point is about helping close some of the learning gaps. And so I just want to reassure you that at this point, the work that is happening for us really is rooted in existing conversations within the district and identified priorities. And how that unfolds, is something that, may or may not be attached to this funding or other funding, but it won't be anything that happens without robust discussion.
Yeah, I seem to recall there was a stage where there were all the proposals from all the people, and that would be when we would commit. So if we get to that, that seems like a time to talk about it, at the board level. But yeah. Any other requests for future agenda items? We'll go ahead. The floor is open for a second round of public comment, if there's any public comment. Not seeing any public comment. Last chance. Okay. The next board meeting is Tuesday, February 23rd at 6 p.m. And is there any request for information or follow-up from the board? Not seeing any. I don't think we decided to use the executive session, so is that correct? So I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Wow.
Yeah, I predicted 8:30. This is really early for us. Aaron, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Leo,
I am going to need about 30 minutes to decide, Brian. I'm just not sure.
drag it
I'll
out,
go
Leo. Drag it out. Mark,
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you, everybody.